Mrs. Cocker? Mr. Martin? Mr. Negrini? Mr. Wolf?
Here.
That's 8 present, 1 absent.
Please rise for the pledge of colors. Please post the colors. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Order, arm. Reverse colors, march. Right, base. Mark time. March. Forward. March.
Thank you. Please be seated. Mr. Maravich, any announcements?
Two opportunities for the public to address the board. One is on agenda items, which is immediately before the agenda. Second is on non-agenda items, which is at the end of the meeting. It is a 3-minute opportunity pursuant to board policy, and the Sunshine Law is not question and answer, but it is an opportunity to provide the board with information about matters that are or may come before it. Sure. There's 2 opportunities to address the board. The first is on agenda items, which is immediately before the agenda. The second is on non-agenda items, which is at the end of the meeting. Pursuant to the Sunshine Law and the board policy, it is not question and answer, but is an opportunity to provide the board with matters that are or may come before it. It's 3 minutes, and I warn you at 1 minute. And I ask that you stop at 0. Thank you. And I think we have got agenda or non-agenda? Okay. The clock's already set.
Okay. Move on along, looking for a motion to approve the minutes.
Sorry about that. The minutes for the school board meeting held on December 17th, 2018. Mr. Martin, thank you. Mr. Case, thank you. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Thank you. At this time, we have Dr. Wayne McCullum here to present the recent transportation study from PASBO.
Good evening, distinguished members of the Board of Education. First of all, I bring you greetings on behalf of the Pennsylvania Association of School Business Officials, and I want to thank you for your distinguished service, as it is School Board Recognition Month, so thank you for your outstanding service to your community as well as the children and the staff here at Wilson School District. Also bring greetings to the public and also staff members who are here. I'm hoping somebody has a clicker. Is that it?
It's not.
It's not there. Rule number 1 in public speaking is make sure you have everything you need. I'll begin and then we'll proceed as soon as I receive it. The Pennsylvania Association of School Business Officials represent, just click for next. Yep. Thank you. Represents 3,000 members throughout our Commonwealth. In addition to supporting and advocating for adequate funding for public education, one of the services we provide to our members is peer reviews of different operations throughout their school districts. We've performed well over 100 of these peer reviews in the last year or so, so we were pleased to work with Wilson School District and the Transportation Department in doing a peer review of operations here.
It's a mouse.
Yes.
So if you keep
So if I put it down and click it.
then you should be fine.
Okay, should?
Yep. So use your left clicker.
Left clicker, got it. All right, first of all, some data, thank you very much. I may need you again, don't run far. Some data related to students transported for the Wilson Area School District. It doesn't show the years, but category 1 here represents and goes forward to year-end fiscal year 2016-2017, but you'll see the number of students transported has been relatively consistent over the years. You'll see the non-public school students that are transported here by the Wilson School District. As you know, you're required to transport children to non-public schools who make that request within a 10-mile radius of Wilson School District. Again, this number has been relatively consistent for 2016-17. The number of children who attending non-public schools that were transported by Wilson School District transportation operations was over 200. You'll see the total cost of student transportation has been relatively consistent at about an operations of approximately $2.9 million. Again, from a consistent basis, this includes not only the labor and benefits required for bus drivers, but also the capital investment for your vehicles that you have to transport your children. The approved cost represents a state formula that determines the reimbursement that school districts are eligible to receive. It's a very complex formula based on the age of vehicles, the capacity of the vehicles, the number of students assigned per vehicles, as well as the miles the buses and vehicles travel with students and without. But the approved cost is basically running all that data through the state formula to determine the approved cost, the approved subsidy that school districts are eligible to receive. And this shows that the school district's approved cost is approximately $1.6 million. This is a smell test from our perspective, which verifies that the Wilson School District transportation operation is fairly, in fact, very efficient in the operation. This number typically, when it runs 50 to 60% for school districts, is very good, and that's the case here at Wilson. So again, it's one data point that verifies that your system is efficiently operated in terms of assigning students and other opportunities for what you do in terms of the miles the buses run and the miles without. Another data point is the cost per student. You'll see how Wilson here in the red, it doesn't show up real well, stacks up from the year 2016-17 compared to other school districts. Here in Berks County, again, your cost per student is well less than the median cost here in the Berks County area. The cost per vehicle is another data point. I should mention that of the two self-operated, Exeter Township is the other self-operated transportation system here in Berks County. But again, you'll see your cost per vehicle is very good and stands slightly better than median from others in the county. And I mention this again because these data points show the efficiency of the system as it now operates and so forth. We do have some recommendations. One is the process to get routes determined hazardous is a lengthy process that involves PennDOT determining that the walking route for children is hazardous. In Pennsylvania, school code does not reimburse school districts for children that attend secondary schools within 2 miles of their school and elementary children within 1.5 miles of their schools unless the route is declared by PennDOT as being hazardous. It's not a decision the school board can make. A school board can decide to transport these children, but they would not receive subsidy or reimbursement for those children unless PennDOT has declared it as being hazardous. And it's a very lengthy process, very detailed process. We also have worked with the business chief financial officer as well as the transportation director to work on the audit record keeping that's needed for audits. Again, just this year, we've updated that process in working with the Auditor General's office. So we're confident that processes are put in place to make sure that all the requirements of the Auditor General's office is in place here at Wilson. We do believe there is an opportunity to look at the routes to see if additional students can be assigned to the vehicles. You'll see that Wilson's operating at about 65% capacity of their vehicles, so there may be an opportunity. I think our best practice would show that number at about 70%, perhaps getting it up to 75%, so a process that I know Mr. Williams has already begun looking at to see if there is a possibility of assigning some additional students to vehicles moving forward to even take an efficient system, perhaps make it slightly more efficient. We believe that the current operation is minimally staffed. It's a large operation, and so we think there may be a need for additional staff, not only to operate the system, but also, again, to keep track of all the records that are necessary, plus all the routing operations that are needed and so forth. So we mentioned that this will likely need to be addressed by the Board of Education at some point. In addition to that, we looked at the organizational structure. Currently, the Director of Transportation reports directly to the superintendent. And because of the complexity of the position, we think that the financial aspects of the position should report to the Chief Financial Officer, and the other day-to-day operations continue to report to the superintendent. We also believe there are needs of additional vehicles. In fact, the board has already, I believe, approved, and the business office has already begun the purchase of these vehicles to meet their special needs programs, as well as to make sure that there are some vehicles on the lot in case there are some that need to be serviced and so forth, to make sure the operation is effective. Okay, we were also charged with looking at what the potential cost would be associated with transporting children that are currently walkers in the Wilson district. So we looked at it on 3 ways. First of all, to provide transportation services for children walkers that are located beyond a mile of their school would require an investment of $270,000, so over $250,000. This number represents purchase of vehicles and then dividing that cost up over a 10-year period, but it also includes driver wages and benefits. This is not the initial cost of purchasing the vehicles. A bus costs typically about $100,000. It could run more based on the features that you add to the vehicle in terms of systems like GPS and strobe lights and all those systems that you could add. So this represents an ongoing annual cost and not the initial cost. Again, in this case, for 6 buses, the initial cost would be probably $600,000 plus on the initial investment, but this would be the ongoing cost. There is a possibility to get additional subsidy. You would get additional subsidy of approximately $70,000 from the state to transport these children. But if the routes are declared hazardous, there is a possibility of having recouped some of that cost of approximately $200,000. So a large cost to transport these children. If the board would decide to transport children whose walking routes are over a half a mile to that 1.5 miles, you'll see it would require approximately 12 buses to do that transportation, again at an annual cost of approximately $45,000 a vehicle, so the cost would be over $500,000. Again, your initial cost investment to purchase vehicles necessary would be over $1 million to do so. Again, the possibility of additional subsidy that we listed here. And then finally, if you provide transportation services for all current walkers within the district, The annual cost would be approximately $810,000. Again, possibility of subsidy from the state to cover almost a quarter of that, approximately 25% of that could be expected in subsidy. But again, your initial investment would approach nearly $2 million to provide that transportation in order to purchase those vehicles. We did look at Green Valley Elementary School. We know that was a question that was brought to the board. We should say this: we visited the site, drove the site, looked at it, and there's a low probability that these routes, walking routes for children, would be declared hazardous. There are sidewalks in that area. There are crossing guards for the school. The district is in the process of putting some other walking routes on the school property and so forth. So while we believe there's a low probability, we do think the board could consider perhaps requesting a PennDOT evaluation of that area to see if the routes could be declared hazardous. The point here is that once those routes are declared hazardous by PennDOT, then the board would be required to provide transportation services for those children. We are recommending that the board do a request for proposal for leasing of vehicles, including buses. We have seen recently that leasing options can be favorable for school districts as opposed to owning their entire fleet. They're often often results in reduced maintenance costs to maintain vehicles, but also typically there's a one-time cash infusion because most of the leasing companies would consider or make an offer to purchase your fleet, and then again, based on the stipulations that you would provide, would keep that fleet updated for you, and we certainly would be willing to offer to do that RFP. In all cases, I should warn you, it's not necessarily a cash benefit in all cases, but it's something that we think the board could consider and probably should look at and do an evaluation based on the results of the request for proposal from vendors. Not asked from us, but not uncommon when districts are self-operated. Should a district consider outsourcing the transportation services? And it's our opinion and experience that outsourcing would not necessarily be beneficial for Wilson, primarily because you have a efficient system at this point. And when you have an efficient system, certainly there is a cost associated with moving to an outsourced system. But the most difficult thing is if you outsource and are not pleased with that vendor, once you give that fleet up and the drivers and training that associated is really difficult to back up. So if you have a good system, which you do, it would not be our recommendation to have an outsourced system at this point. In addition to that, I've known Mr. Williams, in fact, worked personally with Mr. Williams, who is your new transportation director, for many years, and you're very fortunate. He's a highly qualified individual to operate your transportation system, and I am extremely confident that Mr. Williams will serve not only the board and the staff and the children, but also the community of Wilson. So I think you have an outstanding new hire that will take a very efficient system and make it better as well. In addition, you've recently hired TransFinder. TransFinder is a software vendor to look at routes to see if there's more efficient, effective ways to do your routing as well. So I think you have a good team with your Chief Financial Officer and with Dr. Fadley, and now with the hire of Mr. Williams, I think you have an outstanding team as well in place to run your operations. I'm open to questions that you may have. Okay. If not, again, we're not here once and going, so if you have any questions, please go through Dr. Fadley or Christine or Randy. We're certainly happy to answer questions anytime. But thank you very much for your service.
Thank you.
Have a nice evening.
Thank you. Board, I'm sure we'll take this information and discuss further. We may have some questions later, but thank you for your thorough job. Okay, moving along to Treasurer's Report. Mr. Martin.
Investment report, the general fund financial reports as presented.
Thank you. Do I have a second? Mr. Negrini, thank you. Roll call, please.
Mr. King?
Yes.
Mr. Ehrlich?
Yes.
Mr. Hart? Dr. Kennedy? Mrs. Cocker? Mr. Martin? Mr. Negrini? Mr. Wolf?
Yes.
That's 8-4, 0 against.
Thank you. Payment of bills, Mr. Martin.
Tonight, the following funds to be paid out of the general fund: $7,837,761.60. From the capital reserve fund, $38,028.47. And from the 2017B construction fund, $164,250.
Thank you. There's a second. Mr. Negrini, thank you. Roll call, please.
Mr. Ehrlich?
Yes.
Mr. Hart? Dr. Kennedy? Mrs. Cocker? Mr. Martin? Mr. Negrini? Mr. Case?
Yes.
Mr. Wolf?
Yes.
That's 8-4, 0 against.
Thank you. And finally, financial reports, Mr. Martin.
Cafeteria for 2018, child care for 2018, activities Southern Middle School for 2018, excuse me, Wilson West Middle School for December 2018, and the senior high for December 18.
Thank you. Is there a second? Mr. Case, thank you. Roll call, please.
Mr. Hart? Dr. Kennedy? Mrs. Cocker? Mr. Martin? Mr. Negrini? Mr. Case? Mr. Ehrlich?
Yes.
Mr. Wolf?
Yes.
That's 8-4, 0 against.
Great. Thank you. Mr. Ehrlich, are you going to stay with us, or were you going to sign off?
No, I'll be able to stay with you.
Great. We're all having fun. Why not? Superintendent's report, Mr. Fabich.
Thank you, President Wolf. Every January, we take time to celebrate School Board Directors Month. And this January is no exception. I want to take a few minutes and publicly thank each one of our board members for the vital role that they contribute to our team of administrators, staff members, and students in helping to assure that the Wilson School District continues to be an excelling school district. There are many reports out there about the number of hours that school board members put in per week, and what the literature says is it's on average about 10 hours per week. And those 10 hours are in addition to many of the full-time responsibilities that our board members have. And they do all of this not because of the paycheck, but because of the care that they have for their community, the care that they have to invest themselves in the policy decisions, the hiring decisions, the financial decisions that help to keep our community and our school district at the forefront of Berks County and of the Commonwealth. So on behalf of the administration, the students, the parents, and this community, thank you for the job that you do. We should probably thank you each month, but January is the dedicated month. But thank you for what you do for this community, because I know at times you get to take a lot of questions and you get questioned about things that are happening. And sometimes those questions are accusatory and sometimes they're not. But I do have faith in this board and the amount of time that they put in, that they are doing their absolute best to ensure that they are good stewards of the taxpayer money. And I appreciate everything you do, so thank you very much.
Thank you.
In addition to my superintendent's report this evening, I do have personnel and program recognitions. I would like to start by recognizing some retirements. It's that time of the year where we start to see more and more retirements hit the agenda. So I'd like to recognize Michelle Bortz, who is the secretary at Cornwall Terrace, who will be retiring effective February 1st of this year with 20 years of service in this Wilson School District. David Campion, custodian at Southern Middle School, effective March 6th, with 8 years of service to the school district. Wanda DiMaio, school bus driver with 27 years of service to the district. And Carolyn Houts, science teacher at West Middle School, effective the final day of this school year, with 34 years of service to the school district. I'd like to publicly thank all of these individuals for their service to our school district in the many years of that service. So with that, I present the personnel and program recommendation.
Thank you very much. Do I have a motion to accept 6.1 through 6.9? Mr. Case, thank you. Second, Mr. Hart. Thank you.
She has been part of many labor negotiations. She's been involved in that team. I've had worked directly with Ms. Houts over the last several contracts. And despite, over the years, some disagreements on how we view the contract, she has been the utmost professional when it comes to negotiations and separating that aspect of her role with her role as a teacher and a member of our community. So I wanted to recognize the extra time that she has put in that capacity in serving this district and looking out for teachers within the Wilson School District. And my oldest daughter had her as a teacher. She will be very disappointed to hear that she will not get the opportunity to go to Jamaica for this biology trip in a couple of years, unless Ms. House, certainly we would welcome her to be part of that trip moving forward, but she will be sorely missed here at the Wilson School District. Yes.
I was going to comment as well. She actually was one of my favorite science teachers coming through school, and I was thrilled to the fact that she was still here once my kids came through and had an opportunity to have her. Just an outstanding person to have your kids be around, and does so much more outside the classroom as well. So she will be dearly missed, but wish her the best. She looks way too young to have taught 34 years, so I hope she has lots of adventures ahead of her, mostly in Jamaica. So thank you. Okay, anyone else? Okay, I think we had a first and a second, so roll call, please.
Kennedy? Yes. Mrs. Cocker? Yes. Mr. Martin? Yes. Mr. Negrini? Yes. Mr. Case? Yes. Mr. Ehrlich?
Yes.
Mr. Hart? Mr. Wolf?
Yes.
That's 8-4, 0 against.
Thank you. Yeah. I don't know how well received it will be. I guess you technically can. One out. All right, moving on to 8.1, have several donations. Looking for a motion to accept with gratitude the following donations. First, from Cornwall Terrace PTO, a check for $13.50 to be used for Kits Interactive Assembly, scheduled for January 24th at Cornwall Terrace. From an anonymous source, a check for $500 to be used to buy gift cards for Whitfield Elementary families in need. From J.B. Hunt Transport, $1,000 worth of school supplies to be used in Mrs. I tried to pronounce this earlier. Duvenzides classroom. The Shiloh Hill Elementary School second grade classroom was chosen as the adopted class winner this year. And from the Green Valley HSA, a check in the amount of $926 to be used for a water refill station. Also looking for a motion to approve and ratify the renewal of district sponsorship contract with Burke's Lanes as presented. Do I have a motion for those two? Mr. Martin, thank you. Mrs. Cocker, second. All in favor? Aye. Opposed?
Aye.
Thank you. Under HR, looking for a motion to approve the agreement and release between the Wilson School District and Aline Smith as presented. 9.2, looking for a motion to request a change of status for Randy Williams from Acting Coordinator of Transportation to Coordinator of Transportation effective January 1st, 2019. 9.3, requesting approval for the Wilson School Bus Driver Sign-On Bonus effective 1/23/19 per attached. And under 9.4, requesting approval to compensate gifted teacher Shelley Campbell, Dr. Frank Reese,
Beth Levan for completion of additional gift IEPs at the rate of $50 per GIEP while colleague is on medical leave. Do I have a motion for those 4 items? Mr. Hart, thank you. Mrs. Cocker, second. Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Mrs. Cocker? Mr. Martin? Yes. Mr. Negrini? Yes. Mr. Case? Yes. Mr. Ehrlich?
Yes.
Mr. Hart? Dr. Kennedy? Mr. Wolf?
Yes.
It's 8-4, 0 against.
Thank you. Under Pupil Services, 10.1, looking for a motion to grant permission to contract with the BCIU to provide programs and services to special education students as presented. 10.2, looking for a motion to grant permission to contract with Cottage 7 Education for a special education student as presented. 10.3, looking for a motion to contract with New Story School as presented. 10.4, motion to grant permission to ratify contract with Maxim to provide classroom nurse services as presented. 10.5, a motion to approve a resolution approving and adopting a student discipline waiver consent agreement dated January 15th, 2019. 10.6, a motion to grant permission to ratify contract with DMI Imaging Services to provide transcript imaging and services at the cost of $8,000 for all transcripts from 2018. And 10.7, looking for a motion to request approval for the 2019-2020 school calendar as presented. I have a motion for those 7 items. Mr. Hart, thank you. Second, Mrs. Cocker. Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Mr. Negrini? Yes. Mr. Case? Yes. Mr. Ehrlich?
Yes.
Mr. Hart? Yes. Dr. Kennedy? Yes. Mrs. Cocker? Yes. Mr. Wolf?
Yes.
That's 8-4, 0 against.
Thank you. Under Operations 12.1, looking for a motion to approve the resolution authorizing the Wilson School District Board of Directors to enter into a license agreement with the Board of Trustees of the Reading Area Community College as presented. And 10.2, looking for a motion to grant permission to purchase district copy paper through the BCIU bid as presented. A motion for those 2. Mrs. Cocker, thank you. Mr. Negrini, second. Thank you. Any discussion? I just wanted to note, I'm pleased that we are once again extending the relationship with Reading Area Community College. It's a great use of a building that normally would not be in use, that we're getting some additional revenue and providing a resource for the community. So pleased to see that going through again. Roll call, please.
Mr. Negrini? Yes. Mr. Case? Yes. Mr. Ehrlich?
Yes.
Mr. Hart? Dr. Kennedy? Mrs. Cocker? Mr. Martin? Mr. Wolf?
Yes.
That's 8-4, 0 against.
Under Finance 13.1, looking for a motion to approve to award contracts for the purchase of fuel through the 2019-2020 school year as presented. 13.2, looking for a motion to approve to open a high school bowling student activity account as presented. 13.3, a motion to approve the budgetary transfers dated December 13th, 2018 through January 15, 2019 as presented. And 13.4, motion to approve to turn over all unpaid 2018 school real estate tax bills to the Berks County Tax Claim Bureau as presented. Motion for those 2. Mr. Martin, thank you. Second, Mr. Case. Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Mr. Case? Yes. Mr. Ehrlich?
Yes.
Mr. Hart? Dr. Kennedy? Mrs. Cocker? Mr. Martin? Mr. Negrini? Mr. Wolf?
Yes.
It's 8-4, 0 against.
Thank you. 14.1, looking for a motion to approve the stipends for the teachers running Building Bulldogs. And 14.2, a motion to approve to advertise for bids for additional virtual reality, augmented reality devices, headsets, and related equipment. A motion for those 2 items. Dr. Kennedy, thank you. Mr. Case, any discussion? Yes.
School board member trying to check it out and provide a little assistance for the incoming kindergartners. And this upcoming year, I haven't, my son will be going to kindergarten next year, so we'll actually be able to participate. So I'm very excited. It's an amazing program. They have all sorts of stations set up for kids for varying subjects, and it's a really good way to kind of get parents before the children are even in kindergarten and kind of give them a glimpse of what they could be working on from now until September, whether it's phonemic awareness or just building their number sense. I think it's a great first start to an introduction for school for a lot of kids. So I'm excited. Great program.
And another great example of what our Education Foundation is providing for the community as well. We have a first and second, so roll call, please.
Mr. Ehrlich?
Yeah.
Mr. Hart? Dr. Kennedy? Mrs. Cocker? Mr. Martin? Mr. Negrini? Mr. Case? Mr. Wolf?
Yes.
It's 8-4, 0 against.
Thank you. Under 16.1, food cafeteria, we're looking for a motion to approve to reject all bids received in response to the dishwasher replacement as presented. Mr. Green, thank you. Mr. Case, any discussion? Roll call, please.
Mr. Hart? Dr. Kennedy? Mrs. Cocker? Mr. Martin? Mr. Negrini? Mr. Case? Mr. Ehrlich?
Yeah.
Mr. Wolf?
Yes.
That's 8-4, 0 against.
Thank you. Under child care, 17.1, looking for a motion to approve the 2019-2020 school year Berkshire Heights Early Learning Center Parent Guidelines Handbook as presented. 17.2, looking for a motion to approve the 2019-2020 school year School Age Before and After School Program Parent Guidelines Handbook. And 17.3, looking for a motion to approve to contract with the BCIU for 22 hours of child care staff training as presented. There's a motion for those three items. Mrs. Cocker, thank you. Mr. Green, thank you. Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Dr. Kennedy? Mrs. Cocker? Mr. Martin? Mr. Negrini? Mr. Case? Mr. Ehrlich?
Yeah.
Mr. Hart? Mr. Wolf?
Yes.
That's 8-4, 0 against.
Thank you. Under policies, we have a second reading of number 225, and then first readings of 222, 223, 226, and 234. So there's no votes on those. Moving on to committee reports. BCTC, Mr. Case.
Believe it or not, it's been a long time since we met as a board, but even longer for the BCTC. So we have not had a meeting since our last board meeting. We have one tomorrow at the East Campus. We've had a committee meeting on facilities and insurance, but I'd prefer that we wait till after tomorrow to report out on anything. So that's my report.
Okay. BCIU, Dr. Kennedy, and then you can do curriculum as well.
to take place March 7th from 6:30 to 8 at Westminster Auditorium. Join us for a parenting program as COCA prevention specialist Teresa Detweiler discussing vaping and juuling, what parents need to know. This hot topic has risen in popularity among schools as attractiveness juul among students has increased. Vaping and juuling has reached epidemic proportions with worsening student well-being. Most popular and therefore consuming represented schools, especially middle school and high school, creating new generation of children.
Attendees will learn about the health risks of Juul and how they perpetuate nicotine addiction. Come hear about this new trend and learn about the impact these electronic cigarette devices can have on our youth.
I too have a top for this year. The parent information night for those who will have to February 5th. At Springwood, at 6 or 6:45. And those monthly sessions, 12 at Springwood for 2:13 at Columbus. So please come out. If you know anybody who has a PTSD that's going to very please feel free.
Great. Thank you very much. Berks EIT, Mr. Schlossman, anything? Okay. Under extracurricular, just a couple updates. I don't know. I'm hoping to catch the end of it. Mr. Martin's referring to our boys basketball team currently playing Berks Catholic, so we'll see how that outcome is. But currently the boys are 13-2, hopefully 14-2 after tonight. Girls basketball is 9-6. Boys bowling is 25-2. Girls bowling is 21-6. Rifle is 2-7. Boys swimming 8-0. Girls swimming 8-0. And wrestling is 11-1. Out of our last committee meeting, something just to point out, the athletic department's going to be putting together kind of an advisory committee that will be made up of administrators and coaches to just kind of meet on a regular basis, get the feel of what's going on in our extracurricular department, if there's issues that need to be addressed, and you know, just kind of keep those lines of communication open. So just wanted the board to be aware of that. Mr. Negrini, under facilities, anything?
Is Monday, February 11th at 4:30.
Okay, thank you.
Operations Center, unless otherwise noted, and we'll try to make that known if it does change location. Sorry about that.
Finance, Mr. Ehrlich.
No report.
Thank you. Mr. Hart, HR. Thank you. Mr. Martin, Legislative.
Not much happening. As you know, the new legislator was sworn in last week. It's going to be interesting to see how quickly property tax reform moves through the legislators, as the governor now is in favor of that property relief. So I think there will be a bill coming through by midsummer because the Democrats are now going to be on board with many of the Republicans. So it's going to be interesting to see what shape it forms. It won't be 76, but there will be something coming.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Troutman, Public Relations.
Thank you. I just have a couple of items under Wilson Good News. We want to congratulate both Wilson Southern and Wilson West Middle Schools for being redesignated as schools to watch in Pennsylvania. Schools are selected for this honor based on academic excellence, developmental responsiveness, social equity, organizational structures, and processes. In addition, each school must display strong leadership, teachers who work together to improve curriculum and instruction, and a commitment to assessment and accountability to bring about continuous improvement. So obviously we are very, very proud of the students, staff, and administration and families at both Wilson Southern and Wilson West for achieving this incredible honor. Those two middle schools are the only two in Berks County to receive that designation. We also want to congratulate Shiloh Hills Elementary School for being named a 2018-2019 Title I Distinguished School by the Pennsylvania Department of Education. Principal Kelly Byrne and instructional intervention teacher Denise Boyer attended the Pennsylvania Title I Improving School Performance Conference where they were recognized for that achievement. We also, under PR, want to congratulate all of our students who participated in this year's Wilson Spelling Bee. And we want to wish the best to the winners, Isabella Vitalis and Lawrence Zhang, who will represent Wilson at the Discover Lehigh First Round Written Spelling Bee on February 21st. And this is a really fun fact. The Wilson Southern Spelling Bee competition went 41 rounds until the winner was determined. And Dr. Flannery read all 41 words. It was a very long spelling bee, like an hour, but it was fun to watch. Also wanted to share that my intern, I have a public relations intern through the Wilson Honors Internship Program. Her name's Kyla O'Lannon, and she recently developed a social media campaign spotlighting our high school honors internship program, which we are promoting to all of our juniors and sophomores over the next couple of weeks. So she interviewed current interns, shared them on district social media, and received a great response from the community. And so we're going to repeat that and feature some additional interns in the future as well. And I also wanted to take some time to thank Jack Williams Tire and Auto for their great partnership with our school district to provide educational training for our driver's ed students. So every quarter, so 4 times a year, our driver education students have the opportunity to participate in this totally free program where they learn important skills such as how to change a tire, how to check fluids, how to use jumper cables, and more. All skills I don't know how to do, but my daughter went to the training, and now she'll be doing that at home, as did, I believe, your children as well. So we're good now. But we really do want to publicly thank Jack Williams Tire and Auto. They donate all their time to provide this excellent service to our students. So thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Case, Ed Foundation.
The Ed Foundation, just a couple of notes. The Iron Chef planning is well underway. Ticket sales go live next week, and this year's event will be held on Sunday, March 24th from 1 to 5 p.m. The WEF received $27,000 recently in EITC, Earned Income Tax Credit funds, from donors in December, and funds have already been given to the Wilson School District. We have awarded 13 venture grants for spring 2019, totaling $6,439. We are thrilled to have 18 applications submitted. So it's a great honor for the WEF to be giving back to the venture grants, and there were a lot of applications, so everything's ramping up there. The Education Foundation, our next WEF board meeting is scheduled for Friday, February 8th, and we also wanted to thank all Wilson School District administration, school board members, and employees for their support of the WEF during the 2018 year. We are proud to also report that we had 100% board giving for the year. So thank you for a great 2018 and for continued 2019. Thank you.
Thank you. Technology, Mrs. Cocker.
The next meeting for our committee is Monday, February 4th at 4 p.m. Upstairs in the admin building.
Okay. Does anyone have a report from Mr. Russo? Oh, it looks like he put some stuff on here. All right, well, that's in there. I guess that can be read. I guess he could just report next board meeting. Okay. Mr. Maravich? 2020? All right. We do have some public participation. Mr. Rutkowski, you want to come up first?
Hi, Ed Rutkowski. And the only comment I have is on approximately January 7th, Reading Eagle published an article listing the Washington Post list of the most challenging high schools in the nation. In this article, Wyomissing High School was praised for finishing 9th in Pennsylvania and 665th in the nation. Governor Mifflin was mentioned for finishing 2,124th, and Daniel Boone was 2351. What I failed to notice was Wilson School district mentioned in this, and I figure 2,300 names is a fair number of schools that we should be striving for recognition in academic matters more than sports success. That's all I have.
Mrs. Keener?
I'm proposing this for quite a few people. My name is Tammy Keener. You all know me. For those who don't know me, I'm a political advocate. I'm on the GOP, and I'm a far-right conservative veteran, Christian mother, wife. So you all know who I am. And don't worry, you don't got to time me tonight, because I'm not going to take a whole lot of your time. I'm too busy myself. I'm still working on, and I'm getting your quotes for the AstroTurf, considered for cancer research, and trying to prevent you all from wildly spending our money. But we do have a serious problem now, because the curriculum, and I probably should have been there today, as much as you're priding yourself with your little curriculums that you are creating, I am grateful for those children that are getting that. I'm not depriving any of them. And we'll get to the bill then, sir, because I have the inside scoop. I have a problem. The people that I'm meeting on the streets, that I'm canvassing, as I go around getting signatures on my petition, they're concerned with the math curriculum. It was changed. The kids from 1 through 5, grades 1 through 5 are failing. These kids are coming home crying to their parents. We don't understand what the teachers are saying. You're not even teaching common math, and you're thinking abstractly. And from my understanding, you've spent, and I'm not quite sure, don't quote me, probably close to $1 million on this cost from a progressive state like California to bring it into our school district. Okay, if I'm wrong on that, I stand corrected. But from my knowledge, that's where it came from. So with that, I'm asking you to explain to me the deficiencies in our old curriculum. Excuse me?
1 minute.
You don't have time. I'm not going to take 3. Trust me. I want you to explain the deficiencies in the old curriculum relative to the cost of replacing it. We need to get that on record. We want an answer for that. So, Dr. Kennedy, I believe that would probably be your area to give me some numbers. I'm an accountant. Give me the numbers. Show me where it was better cost savings for our school district not to spend this and teach our children the way we were taught. The old curriculum. What was wrong with our old curriculum? What deficiencies did it contain? Okay, getting to the bill, there are 2 bills in the House that will be introduced this year, sir. HB 76 will give it a go again. Been working on it for almost 30 years. It's not, I don't think it has the time. Anyway, HB 13, look for it, guys. That's our slam dunk.
Thank you.
We will eliminate it. No auditorium.
Any other business from the board? Mr. Negrini?
My understanding, Dr. Stevens, is the Washington Post article on U.S. News and World Report rankings that is based solely upon the number of students taking AP exams compared to the ratio of students within the district.
That is correct.
And that that is one barometer of ranking from one particular study. There's other ways of ranking schools in terms of performances on AP exams or tests. It doesn't tell us anything about how those students performed, I think, on some of those AP exams.
That is correct.
So again, there's, and I appreciate, the comments on bringing that to the forefront, but to suggest that this district and this board does not in any way, consider academics over anything else is simply false, and that we have other rankings that demonstrate how seriously this district, this administration, and this board considers academics over anything else.
We would be more than glad to bring some of those examples to our next meeting and present those to you publicly.
Thank you.
That's all I have. Great. Mr. Hart? Huh? Okay. Do I have a motion to adjourn? Mr. Hart? Thank you. We are adjourned.